Hello and greetings everyone. We're going to start. I welcome us all to today's class on the Afrolongevity educational program. This is class 15 for the third cohorts. We've successfully done the first cohorts where we got a lot of over 100 participants passing. Now, then the second cohort, over 120 persons passing out, and then this is the third cohort, and it's self-paced. We're live on YouTube. Those who are still at work, that will join on YouTube to learn what is being discussed today. The idea of this class or this program is to shape the people of African descent to ask for them to understand what there is um, in the longevity industry, in the longevity science, longevity economy, and how we can shape our own stories and our programs. So our faculty today is Fiona Miller, very kind-hearted longevist. So she's a serial entrepreneur and yeah, founder and CEO of Octoscope. She is one of the people that really understand what it means to do business in the longevity space. And I'm super proud of what she's been doing and with some of those that pass through her or in their programs doing absolutely well in the X Prize projects. And she shared some of those stories with us in the last segment. So thank you so much, Fiona, for making our time to be here. And I welcome each and every one of us who made time to be here. We welcome Eve for being part of our conversations today. Please do make contribution when it's time for sharing and contribution. I'll now yield the mic to Fiona for her to tell us a little bit of her background, and then we get into the presentation proper. So you are a co-host. You can share your slides if you have something to share with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back. And I look forward to also getting your feedback and update on how things are going in Africa and your countries on longevity. So yeah, I'm gonna share. Let me see if I can share. Probably. Let's try this. Hang on just a second. I am going to try. So can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. And I also wanted to introduce my colleague Eve Varunkina, who's joined the call. She's helping me run the fund, so maybe she can also chime in to answer any questions. So yeah, so an update. So I would like to tell you a little bit about the fund itself. And each fund has a thesis. So this is our reason for being. This is what we invest in. And we invest in a wide range of technologies that deal with biotech and healthcare. And they include pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, software equipment, and devices. But the key thing is they have to be able to treat disease or prevent disease through biological age reversal. So this is a little bit of a trick we use with the FDA in the US because we cannot have a company that just has, let's say, developed a new drug or treatment to reverse aging. FDA does not recognize aging as a disease, and that company will not be able to sell or market such a solution. So we always look at diseases, but it is important to understand that when you treat aging, There are many diseases, almost all the diseases that we deal with in our medical history, we can treat through biological age reversal, because young people, when we're young, we get very, very few diseases. We're healthy, our immune system is strong. And so this is the trick we use, basically. Disease to get to the real goal is age reversal and staying healthy. So how do we do it? So we have a bunch of diseases. There are hundreds of diseases, and about 80% of them are age related. Young people don't get Alzheimer's. They don't typically get heart disease. Most of these diseases are really diseases of aging. And the idea of our field is to reverse biological aging. And so what is aging and how do we reverse it? How do we treat aging? And that problem we've been looking at since the turn of the century, since around the start of, early 2000s, is when scientists first started questioning, is it really possible? Is it really inevitable that we age, or can we reverse it? And since then, we have a dozen of these we call hallmarks of aging that were defined that we can in fact treat. And if we would treat these dozen hallmarks, we make the person stronger and younger, and maybe they won't get these diseases, or if they already have these diseases, they can overcome them. And so examples of these hallmarks are, for example, a lot of scientists now focus on mitochondrial dysfunction. And mitochondria basically power each of our cells. There are hundreds of these little buggers in each cell, and they're energy producers. And as we age, they don't work well anymore. It's kind of like a battery with corroded contacts. We have to go in and revitalize it. And that causes a lot of issues. Mitochondria, for example, it basically points to Parkinson's disease directly. So if you can restore mitochondria, you can cure Parkinson's disease. And we have a company in our portfolio that is working on that. Mitochondria is also implicated in heart disease. And heart disease is something half of us will die from unless we can treat it. So really important stuff. We have inflammation. That's another hallmark. And I think mitochondria and inflammation are the hallmarks that mainstream medicine totally recognizes and knows how harmful they are and understands their role in the diseases. Increasingly dysbiosis, which is microbiome dysfunction, is also recognized by mainstream medicine. And then we have things like stem cell exhaustion. We can't, as we get older, our stem cells die out. And without them, we can't regenerate, we can't repair the damage to our organs, which when we're young, we repair something. I scratch my knee if I'm 10, it heals immediately. If I am 70, it will take 2 weeks, the same scratch, right? And this is where our repair mechanisms are giving out. And, our genes get damaged. Epigenetics, which runs, epi is on top of our genome. Epigenetics basically alters how genes are expressed. So as we age, because of epigenetic alterations, we may be turning on genes that damage our cells, or turning off genes that we really need when it worked perfectly when we were young. So a couple of examples to really bring it home. So these are just two examples. So these are all the diseases that are recognized now that can be treated by addressing chronic inflammation. So that's a big one. Um, and then these are all the diseases that are actually in trials that can be treated through cellular senescence, right? So here's the magic of longevity medicine is by treating a dozen of these things up here, we can then treat hundreds of diseases. And these dozen things are root causes of these diseases. So we're treating a root cause of disease. So the companies that we invest in, they start out as companies that fight diseases. And but then they go on and these same treatments can be used by the rest of us. And it's a very, very big market because all of us are aging. Okay, so one example of it is, of course, the weight loss drugs. We all know how successful they are. And it's exactly the same business model, if you will, okay? So this is the first drug that came out from Novo Nordisk. It came out for a disease. So we had type 2 diabetes is what it addressed in 2017. But then look at 2021, it's now used to treat root cause. And root cause of type 2 diabetes is weight, is extra weight, is obesity, is a metabolic disease. And so for the first time, now we can address the root cause. And then we went on to look at other diseases, heart attack and stroke, chronic kidney disease, a whole bunch of uses, and on we're increasing why people are using, healthy people are using these drugs just to lose weight, right? So that's a tremendous market. Everybody knows how successful it is. And so our fund is aiming to create a dozen such industries, big industries, where our companies will address a disease, but then that same treatment can be used by everyone. So anybody who's aging, they can restore their mitochondrial function, they can reduce chronic inflammation, and inflammation causes muscle atrophy, by the way, which is a terrible thing for aging. We can improve our muscle, we have recovery, and we'll be resilient from diseases. So, so basically, let's see, did I skip something? No. So we invest across the hallmarks of aging. These are some of the companies in our portfolio that are treating or focusing on the different aspects of aging. And of course, they have diseases that they treat as well. But we are more concerned with aging because that's what gives them this huge market and ability to change our lives. And so these, if you want to look at traditional categories, so these are the big categories, let's say big pharma companies will be looking at. They have groups focusing on oncology, immunology, central nervous system, metabolic diseases. And so our companies can do all of that. But really that's not, that's traditional medicine. So biotech, longevity biotech has been a kind of a fringe market for a long time. But we are seeing signs that it's emerging. It's emerging as a mainstream market. And I link here to some of the mainstream publications. We have companies with market caps in trillions of dollars. We've got big pharma companies co-investing, and we're now starting to see some treatments coming to market. We also see, I mean, Boston is home to biotech. It's one of the world's biggest biotech hubs. As you know, we have Harvard and MIT and a bunch of big biotech pharma companies here in Boston. We have a lot of conferences. And almost all of them now have longevity tracks, which is another sign that this industry is going mainstream. So I have some 10 speaking engagements in the upcoming longevity week. We have all the key conferences in longevity coming to Boston. So looking forward to that. So one thing you mentioned is X Prize. And X Prize is a central thing. It's a central thing for our industry. And why is it a central thing? Well, there is a $101 million, we call it prize purse. I think the winning company is gonna, I think they're gonna get something like 90 million of that. They have a few prizes that are intermediate prizes before, but it's still a lot of money. And this is very interesting the way it's organized because it's already running. It's a 7-year effort for companies. And they have to demonstrate before 2030, sometime in 2029, that they can reverse our function by 10 years, so make us essentially 10 years younger. And how do we measure that, right? So we have to restore muscle, we have to restore our cognitive abilities and our immune system, okay, immune function. By a minimum of 10 years, they're hoping it will be more like 20 years. And so I'm waiting. By 2029, there will be a treatment that will make me 10 years younger. And then we'll be able, and these measurements, by the way, are also important because there's no way to measure aging now. Even if our FDA said, okay, we can certify you for aging, and you have to go run a trial, and then you have to wait until people die until they're 100. So you have this 100-year or more trial just to show that you've extended life, right? So biomarkers are very, very important for our field because nobody's going to run a 100-year trial. That's just impractical. But we need some metrics. And so another thing that X Prize committee and that whole group that's running it is doing is they have a central lab. They have actually 2 labs in the US where all of the finalists are going to go and submit for measurement, and whatever their treatment does, they're going to be measured by those same labs. So that's another pretty exciting thing for the industry, is that we have all these people and they're being measured the same way, and we'll know who is best and by how much they can reverse our age. So you can read more about it at this link. But okay, so today they came out with 20 finalists, and it's a big, international competition. So you can look up these companies. Actually, if you watch this, I'll put a link in here. This is a video by people who run the program, and some companies out of this list are featured in this video, so you can go. It's a little bit long, but worth watching. And out of our portfolio, we have 3 companies that made semifinals. They didn't make the shorter list, but they made a pretty short list of 40 back in May of 2025, and they're still doing well. But this is us at the semifinal celebration in New York back in May of last year. And so these are the 3 companies in our portfolio. But, just because they made X Prize is grading them just on the science. So it's the science, it's all the testing that's going to run, validation, of course, trials, all of that. That doesn't mean these companies are going to be successful in the market commercially. And so for us, the overlap with the companies we think are going to do well is just one of these. And we have highlights. There are 6 companies we like out of our portfolio, or not just who like, there are others that are very early, still young companies, and it's not clear how well. I hope they all do well. There are maybe 2 or 3 companies we know are going to drop out and not do anything, just close. And that always happens in the portfolio. But these 6 stand out. Why? Because they have emerged, they have done a lot of work there, either clinical or they're making revenue, they have some validation in the market, and they have cash. They either have very high investor confidence or they're actually making revenue. And they also have industry partnerships. And so briefly, we mentioned inflammation. Inflammation causes muscle atrophy. So our company Immunis, they're already in human trials, and they have initially positive results. The trials are still ongoing, so we'll see how well they do. But very exciting. And what they're doing when they reduce chronic inflammation, the real goal is to treat muscle atrophy, because inflammation causes your muscles to shrink. And today, we have this huge field of weight loss drugs, right? And these weight loss drugs, it appears, also cause people to lose muscle mass, right? And there are a bunch of companies trying to work kind of side by side with these weight loss drugs and rebuild the lost muscle. And so Immunis is one of those companies. Excuse me. I'm going to share again. Okay. So Immunis is one of those companies we hope is going to do well. Their investors are behind them. They have to get through some more trials. I mentioned the company that treats mitochondrial dysfunction, and they're very close to getting into human trials. They have support from Michael J. Fox Foundation, and they are running some compassionate trials on Parkinson's disease by fixing mitochondria. But of course, again, if they can restore mitochondrial function, that's a very, very big deal for all of us. There are some scientists who are convinced that by restoring mitochondria, most of the other hallmarks will fix themselves. So that's very promising. Now we have tissue regeneration. So, and then we have AI-based medicine company. We have a company that can reverse atherosclerosis. Again, the buildup of plaque. There is no other company in the world that can reverse it. The best thing you have is statins, which may slow down the buildup. So this is a very big deal because about half of the people die of this condition. And if we can treat it, that's a very big deal. We have Matter Bio that has powerful gene therapy platform using Listeria to deliver the payload that will treat. They're starting with pancreatic cancer and breast cancer at this point. So what I would like to do is we looked at the hallmarks of aging, and these hallmarks are all focused on cells. So all of those dozen things you saw, they happen inside each cell in our body, right? Mitochondria works inside cells. All the inflammatory proteins run around the body and act in cells. Senescence, all of those hallmarks deal with cells. But really, the cells may not be the only or even the main culprit. The extracellular matrix is basically the fabric that holds all the cells. It basically consists of collagen and elastin. It makes up our blood vessels, our skin, our lungs, all the organs, everything in our body. And it's not, and the cells, they live on this matrix. If you zoom in, and now I have another slide, they live on that matrix and they build it and maintain it. It's their home. And you can get a little more insight here. And it's been demonstrated that you can take stem cells from an older organism, implant them in a young organism, and they will work just fine. The cells themselves can outlive its host. You do the reverse. You take the stem cells from a young organism and put them in the old organism, and they die. They don't implant, they don't do anything. They're not happy there. Okay. So why is that? Because they have to live on this extracellular matrix. So this is very interesting. These are actual photos, right? So this is an adult, mature matrix here. But as we get older, some of these fibers fray. It becomes a real mess, as you can see. We're also eating these AGEs, advanced glycation end products, that are sticky, sugary substances that gunk up this matrix. And when it becomes old like this, stem cells just can't function. They have no place to live and they can't keep up with rebuilding it. Embryonic matrix looks very, very different. So this is what it looks like in an early embryo at gastrulation. It looks like a foam and it vibrates. It vibrates when the cells are on it. They can set up vibrations, and that's their means of communicating with one another. And so when you are just a few cells embryo, this is the matrix that cells use to tell each other what they're going to build. Some cells are going to become an eye, some cells are going to become a liver, skin, whatever, but they use this matrix to talk to one another. And so one of our companies that I mentioned up in the previous slide, BioChange, they have developed biomaterial that looks just like that. And when they inject it into a damaged tissue, and I'll show you some examples of their market today, but it's very broad applications. They can fix wounds, they can stop bleeding, they can fix incontinence, restore your face. But they started with periodontitis. But this is where, when they inject that material, cells think they're in an embryo and they have to go rebuild the damaged tissue, right? So this is an example of what biochange can do. When they are starting with periodontal disease, and when they put their material, you see this, they're treating dogs right now. And this is a dog's jaw. And we all lose teeth as we age, and we lose them because the bone recedes, the bone that actually holds our teeth. The gum follows it, and then we lose our teeth. So with that material alone, they've been able to restore both bone and gum around the tooth. So it becomes completely healthy. And so this is very, very interesting, because this is another dog. And this dog is actually, it belongs to the surgeon that did the work, right? And it had two damaged teeth run right next to each other, right? And they used biochange, this embryonic foam, on this teeth here. And then they used a competing product, another treatment, on just the tooth next door, right? So now this is 3 years follow-up. So check this out. So the biochange grew bone around it. This tooth continued to lose its support. And here, after 3 years, this bone and gum are all healthy and holding the tooth, but the adjacent tooth is gone. So this 3-year data is very significant. This is a miracle we have not seen yet. So this company is going into human trials in Israel very soon. They are finalizing all the approvals documentation. We're hoping they also come to Boston. They have a clinical trial partner here. So we are hoping that they'll be here soon. I'm going to just finish with the last slide, and Alden is another company I highlighted. And I have to mention artificial intelligence and machine learning, and that's what this company is doing, because it is now accelerating. Drug discovery used to take years. It would take 3 or 4 or 5 years of scientists in universities working in the lab and trying hundreds, if not thousands, of iterations of various molecules to solve the disease. Today we have computational AI that can just do it in less than a week. So we're shrinking several years into a week's worth of effort. We have robotic labs. We have actual wet lab combined with this AI in a loop, so that even they don't need humans. There are companies that are being invested in to do this completely automated lab, where AI will figure out all the iterations, reduce them to a manageable number, and have robots running around and trying. The same science also treats, it can provide individualized medicine. So today, when we test a drug, it may work. We could say, oh, it worked in 80% of the population, and that's great. But what happens to the other 20? Or some drugs work in 60, 70%, and then we release them to market. But we really have the tools today to really figure out for this particular patient, given their genomics and all the biomarkers that we can measure, how to, and what they have, we can diagnose. Often patients get misdiagnosed, okay? But it's the same, important thing here is that it's the same technology that's used for drug discovery and for treating patients, okay? And so this example, just to kind of help you understand, the important thing for AI is to train it, because if you train it on garbage, it will not be able to help you. And so it's data sets. And this company understands it. And so their AI is trained. There's UK Biobank, which is probably the largest and oldest data set in the world. In UK, there is socialized regulated medicine, and they've just collected records on everything. And now it's a very valuable resource for AI. There is Digital Me data set, which belonged to a company, the founder of this company that he previously founded. Something like $50 million went into building just that one data set. They purchased a German company, OnCommune, and this brought a whole bunch of data on immunology and cancer immunology treatment. There's probably many people know Dr. Dean Ornish treated Alzheimer's, and he has a data set. So it's like a doctor. We have a doctor who actually knows this vast number of facts. This AI has access to everything. It never forgets. It connects all the dots. It can take a patient's, in this case, this is a doctor being questioned by AI, and it can take the patient's condition and all the biomarkers that we know, and take these data sets and process all that information. And there is not a single human being on earth that can handle so much information together and connect all the dots and figure out what to do, what's wrong, and how best to address it, right? And so that's the future of AI. And there's, it's very, very central, not just to our industry, but to biotech, and it's propelling biotech in a big way. So that's all I have, folks. I am happy to take questions or hear anything you have to say about the industry.
Thank you so much for that excellent teachings and trying to expand or brief us on what is happening in the longevity economy and the business aspect of that. So it's now time for question and interaction. So anyone who got question, just have to raise your hand and then ask. Mr. Taiwo, I expect you to ask question. You've been writing absolutely well with regards to the business aspects of longevity in Africa and Nigeria. So now is the time to ask those questions.
Good evening, Prof. Like I used to call you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. So yes, I've been following, and like you said, I think you mentioned something about the cholesterol, uh, something, and I don't know. I think based on what I used to call OC Prof anyway. So if I call Prof, I'm referring to him. So based on what OC is working on in Nigeria, I don't know how possible it is for a startup is in Nigeria who is working on any of the the vision objectives that you are working on, if it is possible to key into what you are doing, because we have a lot of these challenges in this part of the world, and even in AI, in health tech AI industry in Nigeria, we are still far behind. Looking at the infrastructure, data, and the like. So I don't know, where can you come in, and how is it possible is there a chance for Nigerians health tech in your company or whatever? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. I mean, I think that we should be expanding into Nigeria and other parts of Africa as an industry. So it takes, it's a little bit of a, when we say chicken and egg thing in the US, right? Who came first, the chicken or the egg? So one way, there needs to be a way to attract these companies to bring development, or maybe we start with testing, the clinical testing, if there are regulations that make it easier, cheaper, faster. That's a very big value for us, for our industry. There are places in the world where we can move much faster than the US. For example, China, India, Australia. Maybe Nigeria can open up. We start with testing, then slowly the industry gets established. Experts, arrive. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the continent of Africa expanding and growing with this industry, because this is a big opportunity. Everybody wants to be healthy. There's, not to live in pain and mental decline for 10, 15 years before we die.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. I think there's essay.
Dr. Nani, you can ask you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for this wonderful insight. You talked about the hallmarks of aging and how there's this damage accumulation as we age. And we equally know that the body mechanism has a repair, the body system has a repair mechanism, but with time it becomes overwhelmed, especially our dieting, lifestyle, and exposure to pollution. And you also talked about drugs from various companies that will help restore muscle mass. You talked about cognitive abilities, and also we talked about immune capacity. So the question is that, or my question is equally related to the last person's question. You know, concerning our realities in Africa, we might not have the advanced technology, the big research labs, or exposed to the high-end biotech labs and all of that. But I know that we have great biodiversity we can actually explore. So if research can be done in that part, is it possible, like the last speaker said, for us to collaborate to see how we can exploit what we actually have in our own context and see how we can develop our own product to see how we can actually restore these hallmarks of aging? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's creative talent everywhere in the world. And yes, I am convinced that it can be done where you folks are. But what's needed is, I mean, it's always politics, right? There needs to be some infrastructure that lets people create companies easily, that protects their right to create and keep their profits. That's called capitalism, right? And wherever we have some political structure that protects people's rights and their profits and everything they want to do, then that structure tends to work well. It has to happen as in steps. I mean, it's a good question. It's a whole discussion, right? But that's kind of, there are countries that invite industry by virtue of setting up these political structure that protects these companies that decide to invest, that enables them to do the work they need to do, provided, of course, they do it responsibly and safely. And so I think it's a very big topic. It is the political infrastructure is key here. And then, but even then it takes time. You have to have some companies that have special incentives to come, let's say, work with population. What's the easiest thing to start with? What our biggest headache is today in the West, it's not discovering drugs, because AI can discover them like that. It's an amazing, intelligent technology that can handle massive amount of data and find drugs. But where we have a slowdown and a big barrier is getting it into humans, right? We can do lab work with mice, with primates, and then we have to move to humans, but they're very big costs. For a typical company, it's like $20 million it requires to go from what we call preclinical to clinical. So preclinical would be work on animals. And then clinical is when you actually, the regulatory authorities allow you to go and treat humans and try, or even just run a trial in humans. So that's the clinical stage. So clinical companies are much more valuable because there's been all that investment and work done to get to humans. But there's no reason this should take 20 million. With the right type of regulatory structure, it shouldn't take that long. There are, in the West and in the US, we have lawyers, we call them tort lawyers, who anything that happens, if somebody dies, and sometimes, these companies treat very sick people and they die. You would be sued, so the companies are afraid to do anything. There's all this risk, people don't want to take risks. And if the company runs a trial and someone dies, it's very public, it's a very big deal, and everybody's trying to stay safe, right? But if you don't take risks, if you're doing something new, you have to take risks. You have to make risks known to people who decide to be in a trial or not. And without it, it's a very, very slow progress right now. So with a country like Nigeria, where there is no infrastructure, you have an opportunity to think through how to set that regulatory infrastructure up to enable you to move faster. China has done it. I know there's news now all over the news channels. They had 3 deaths. Some of them could have been prevented. So, but that's not a reason to stop. I mean, they also move much, much faster than the US, and they can help more people if they get these treatments to market sooner. But if we are afraid to fail, we're afraid of risks, and we stigmatize these unfortunate events, that's kind of what slows us all down. And it's something that emerging economies have an opportunity to start with a better setup than what we have. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Look at comments. Okay, let me quickly react to some of these comments. Yeah, there are a lot of things, there are opportunities, but the strategy is somewhat a little bit stringent now because of historical accounts and events. Dr. Nyok would agree with me with regards to this one now. So there have been past events where people use Africans as lab rats, and then use Nigeria as a dumping ground for hectic clinical trials. And then most persons are completely focused with regards to this, and we are really, really careful with Africa just having being genetically diverse and all that. There is also the part that the universal model, I've always argued in World Academy for Medical Science, is that the universal model of clinical trial shouldn't be that applied in Africa, especially in Nigeria, because we are looking at factors and co-factors affecting the human condition. And the factors varies. One who is living in Lagos, and then one who is living in my place, like in the rural areas in Nigeria. So then the same thing with other parts of Africa. So we would want to really follow up systems, which is why if you check the NAFDAC website, they now have a system where you submit, apply for clinical trials, and I have been making inquiry, and that's something that we might discuss after the class, or maybe some other time, where you apply for it and for clinical trials, and so in most cases it varies depending on what and who is sponsoring the trial in Nigeria. That is how it is. And yeah, the application fee is, and the processing fee is always different than you do the other costing. So they help you to do the clinical trials. And yes, I think it's a little bit easier compared to what is happening in Europe and America, but we are really pushing hard to ensure that we tighten up the thing because of what must have happened in the past, which is why most people run their clinical trials in China and others, then use the data set and then go to those countries to do white labeling and then bringing back the product to Nigeria. I've really written so much and strongly that some of those practices is why we are where we are. And the very fact that Nigeria is still practicing open drug markets, it makes it easier for someone to just walk to China, walk to India, to white label the product, get the certificate, give it to NAFDAC. They will just look at it. The regulatory authority will just look at the licensing and everything. So this is approved. The equation balances, and then we keep on risking our life. And they will say, oh, why? They'll say, oh, this is perfect, but no one is paying attention to the pharmacovigilance with regards to that. I've said it repeatedly. The last time those things happened in Nigeria was the time of Dora Akunyili, but they keep claiming, and that is why we have substandards and all those things. But with my little knowledge of clinical trial, I think we can actually push for it to see what is feasible and to ensure that we do it the right way with Africans and Nigerians in mind.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's an individual decision, right? A person who is very sick, let's say about to die of cancer, they will probably want to tolerate some risk, right? And they will travel to a place where they can try. That's the thing, is it has to be up to the person. But then you need board review boards, scientific review boards, doctor, physician should have a say. You have to, as an individual, be able to protect from people who just want to make money and take advantage and treat you because you're vulnerable. So it doesn't come without any checks and balances, right? There has to be an infrastructure. But anything over-regulated, it doesn't always make it safer, right? If there's, for example, to make a CGMP, you have to make a CGMP, good manufacturing practice drug to go into humans, and that can be alone $10 million. And where does this money go? Does it make patients safer? Because you can treat a dog and it's safe enough, but for human, you're adding mountains of regulatory paperwork and documentation and approval steps that it makes it $10 million, and only certain companies can do that, all of that, but it's so over-regulation, it just adds documentation, doesn't necessarily make it safer, because we may have already proven safety in the animals, and with reasonable, like scientific judgment, we should be able to know, and then an individual, it's himself or herself, should be able to have enough information from their scientists and doctors, or for some private industry that's set up to regulate it. And then they make a decision based on, if it's something that's just preventive, I don't want to take a huge risk if I'm healthy. And I just want to wait for it to be proven. But if it's something, if I have Parkinson's and I'm in pain and I tremor every day, I would be able to take more risks. And I would be able to decide if there is infrastructure that allows it. So that's kind of the vision. The vision is that it's an individual decision, that the decision is aided by expert boards and physicians. But that allows us to try new things and move forward.
Yeah, thank you so much. Any other comments, question? Okay.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope to get back again.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're going to have a side conversation. Please be expecting my email and all that. Wishing you all the best. Thank you all for making our time to be here. Where is your colleague? She's not here again.
Yeah, I think she had to leave. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do have a lovely one ahead. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.